You want a job? Then stop breathing down my neck and go mop the bathroom floor.
I already put in my application 3 weeks ago. Mr. Vance said he would.
Mr. Vance doesn't own this place anymore. I do.
Mr. Vance doesn't own this place anymore. I do, and I don't hire college kids who think they deserve a gold star for showing up on time. The young man in the worn-out gray hoodie stood quietly at the counter of the Daily Grind coffee shop, his hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of black coffee he had just paid for with his last $5. Behind the counter, the new shift manager, a heavy-set woman with sharp acrylic nails and a permanent sneer, had just torn his resume in half and dropped the pieces into the trash can like confetti. She didn't know that the man she was humiliating had founded this coffee chain 12 years ago. She didn't know that Vance, the former manager she mentioned, had been fired last month for stealing from the register. And she definitely didn't know that the coffee in his cup was brewed from beans he had personally sourced from a family farm in Colombia. He took a slow sip, looked her in the eye, and said nothing. Then he pulled out his phone and typed a single text message. If you want to see how a quiet college kid makes a bully lose everything in the next 60 seconds, then smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments from where you are watching from today.
The Daily Grind had 27 locations across 3 states, but the downtown Chicago branch on Wacker Drive was the original. It was the first shop Marcus DeLuca had opened back in 2012, using the last of his savings from working double shifts at a tire warehouse. He had painted the walls himself, installed the espresso machine with a wrench borrowed from a neighbor, and memorized every regular customer's name within the first month. That shop was his baby. 12 years later, Marcus was worth $8 million. But he was also exhausted. Corporate culture had crept into his company like mold behind a wall. Regional managers had hired shift managers, and shift managers had hired teenagers who didn't care whether the latte art looked like a leaf or a potato. Customer complaints were up 40%. Employee turnover had doubled, and every time Marcus visited a location as himself, in a suit with a district manager trailing behind him like a worried dog, everyone pretended to be perfect. The bathrooms sparkled. The employees smiled like mannequins. The muffins were always fresh. He never saw the truth. So he decided to go undercover. He borrowed a beat-up Honda Civic from his cousin, bought a wardrobe of faded jeans and hoodies from a thrift store on Cicero Avenue, and grew out his stubble for 2 weeks. His new identity was Eli Vance, no relation to the fired manager, a 22-year-old business student at DePaul University looking for part-time work. He even practiced a softer way of speaking, dropping the confident tone he used in board meetings for something shyer and more uncertain. The plan was simple: apply for a job at the Wacker Drive location, work behind the counter for 1 week, observe everything, then fire the bad apples and promote the hidden gems. He submitted his application on a Tuesday. A woman named Keisha Soloway, the new shift manager, called him the next day. Her voice on the phone was friendly, almost warm. She said they were desperate for help and asked if he could come in for a quick chat on Thursday morning. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. Marcus, Eli, showed up at 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. The shop was quiet, lit by soft orange bulbs and the blue glow of the pastry display case. A young barista with pink streaks in her hair was wiping down the counters. Her name tag said Sage. She smiled at him and asked if he wanted a coffee while he waited. He said yes. That cup of black coffee cost him his last $5 because he wanted to feel like a real customer. He paid cash. He left a $1 tip in the jar. Then he sat at a small table near the window and waited for Keisha Holloway to arrive. She walked in at 7:12 a.m., 27 minutes late. She was wearing designer sneakers that cost more than his entire thrift store outfit. She didn't apologize. She looked at him, looked at his hoodie, and told him to follow her to the back office. The office was a closet with a laptop and a broken chair. She sat behind the desk and asked him 3 questions. "You ever make coffee before?" He said yes, at a small cafe near campus. "You okay working weekends?" He said yes. "You okay with minimum wage and no tips for the first 90 days?" He said he thought tips were shared equally among all staff according to company policy. That was when her face changed. The fake warmth vanished like fog in sunlight. She leaned forward and said, "Here's the thing about company policy, Eli. I am the company policy. If you want a job, then stop breathing down my neck and go mop the bathroom floor." He told her about the application he had submitted 3 weeks ago. She told her that Mr. Vance didn't own this place anymore. That was a lie. Vance had been the regional manager, not an owner. But Marcus didn't correct her. He just sat there, holding his coffee, watching her tear his resume in half with the satisfaction of someone tearing up a parking ticket. "Get out of my shop," she said. He stood up, walked to the front counter, and looked at Sage. She gave him a sad little shrug, as if to say, "I'm sorry, that's just how she is." He pulled out his phone and typed a text to his actual district manager, a woman named Helena Cruz, who had no idea he was undercover. The text said, "Come to the Wacker Drive location now and bring the security team." Then he sat back down at the small table near the window and waited.
For the next 45 minutes, Marcus watched his own coffee shop operate like a slow-motion disaster. Keisha Holloway didn't just manage the staff, she bullied them. She screamed at a teenage boy named Theo for putting too much foam on a cappuccino, then made him remake it 4 times while customers watched. She told Sage that her pink hair was unprofessional and that she had until the end of her shift to dye it back to a normal color. Sage looked like she was about to cry, but she didn't. She just nodded and kept working. Then a middle-aged woman in a nurse's uniform walked in and ordered a simple drip coffee. Keisha poured it, handed it over, and the woman took a sip before saying it tasted burnt. Keisha rolled her eyes so hard her whole head moved. "It's the same coffee we always serve," Keisha said. "Maybe your taste buds are broken." The nurse's face fell. She set the cup down gently like it might explode and walked out without asking for a refund. Marcus watched her go and felt something cold settle in his chest. That woman had probably just finished a 12-hour shift at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She had come to his coffee shop for a moment of comfort, and one of his managers had treated her like garbage. He looked at his phone. Helena texted back, 5 minutes out. Then Keisha noticed him still sitting there. She stomped over to his table, planted both hands on the surface, and leaned down so her face was inches from his. "Why are you still here?" she said. Her voice was loud enough for the entire shop to hear. The morning rush had started, and there were at least 15 customers in line. "I told you to leave. Are you deaf or just stupid?" Marcus didn't flinch. He looked up at her and said, "I'm waiting for a friend." "Your friend isn't welcome either. This is my store, my rules, and I say you have 60 seconds to get out before I call security and have you trespassed." "You don't have security," Marcus said quietly. "You fired the security guard last week because he asked for a raise." The shop went silent. Sage stopped wiping the counter. Theo froze mid-pour. Even the customers turned to look. Keisha's face turned a shade of red that Marcus had only seen on ripe tomatoes and angry wrestlers. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "I know a lot of things," Marcus said. He took another sip of his coffee. It was cold now, but he didn't care. "I know you've been stealing tips from the jar, about $40 a week, right? You take it out every Friday before the evening shift starts. I know you forged your timesheet last month to show 40 hours when you only worked 32. And I know you told Theo that if he reported you, you'd make sure he never worked in food service in this city again." Keisha's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. "Who are you?" "I told you, I'm Eli, just a college kid looking for a job." "You're lying." "No," Marcus said, "you're lying. Every single day to every single person in this room. You lied to Sage about the tip policy. You lied to Theo about his pay rate. You lied to that nurse about the coffee being burnt. It wasn't burnt, by the way. You just don't know how to clean the machine and you're too proud to ask for help." By now, everyone in the coffee shop was staring. A man in a business suit had his phone out, recording.
2 college girls were whispering behind their laptops. Theo had set down his milk pitcher and was watching with wide eyes, like he couldn't believe someone was finally saying the things everyone had been thinking for months. Keisha recovered quickly. Bullies always do. She straightened her back, pointed her finger at Marcus, and said,
You're a nobody. You walked in here with a $5 cup of coffee and an attitude problem. I don't know who told you those lies about me, but I promise you, by the time I'm done, you won't be able to get a job scrubbing toilets at a bus station. That's interesting, Marcus said, because I actually own a bus station. Well, I own the building it's in. It's one of my commercial properties on the south side. Keisha laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. You own property? You can't even afford a jacket without holes in it. He looked down at his thrift store hoodie. There was a small tear near the left cuff. He had noticed it that morning and almost worn a different one, but now he was glad he hadn't. Appearances can be deceiving, he said. Isn't that right, Keisha? You look like a manager, but you're really just a thief with a name tag. She lunged forward and grabbed his coffee cup. She dumped the remaining liquid onto the floor, right next to his shoes, and threw the empty cup at his chest. It bounced off and landed on the table. "Get out!" she hissed. "Now!" Marcus stood up slowly. He was 6 feet tall, and even in his shabby clothes, he had a presence that made Keisha take a half step back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten her. He just looked at her with a calm that was more terrifying than any scream. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "You're going to walk back behind that counter. You're going to apologize to Sage and Theo for the way you've treated them. Then you're going to take out your phone and Venmo that nurse the $5 you owe her for the coffee she didn't drink." "Or what?" Keisha said. "Or nothing," Marcus said, "because I'm not the one who decides your fate. She is." He pointed toward the front door. It had just swung open, and Helena Cruz was standing there in her navy blue blazer, flanked by 2 men in security uniforms. Behind them, a lawyer in a gray suit held a thick folder of papers. Keisha's face went pale, not red this time, white, the color of a woman who had just realized she had made a very expensive mistake. "Helena," she said, forcing a smile, "I didn't know you were coming by. We have a situation here with a homeless guy who won't—" Helena walked past her without a word. She stopped in front of Marcus, extended her hand, and said, "Mr. DeLuca, I'm so sorry you had to witness this." The coffee shop gasped. Every single person in that room understood what had just happened. The kid in the torn hoodie wasn't a kid at all. He was the owner, the founder, the man whose face was on the About Us page of the company website. Marcus shook Helena's hand and turned to face Keisha. Her eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal looking for an exit. "You said Vance doesn't own this place anymore. You were right. He never did. I do. And Keisha, you're fired."
The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear the ice maker in the back room dropping cubes into the bin. Keisha stood frozen behind the counter, her acrylic nails pressed against the marble surface like she was trying to hold on to something solid in a collapsing world. She opened her mouth 3 times, but no words came out. For the first time all morning, she had nothing to say. Helena Cruz stepped forward and opened the folder. Inside were printed copies of Keisha's forged timesheets, bank statements showing the missing tip money, and a signed statement from a former employee who had witnessed her harassing Theo. Helena read each item aloud in a calm, professional voice, like a news anchor delivering a weather report. The customers listened. The employees listened. Even the man in the business suit lowered his phone and just watched. "In addition," Helena said, "we have reason to believe you have been accepting cash payments from a local vendor in exchange for exclusive pouring rights, which violates Section 14 of your employment contract. The vendor's name here is listed as—" "Stop," Keisha whispered. "Please just stop." Marcus stepped closer to the counter, not close enough to threaten, but close enough to show that he wasn't afraid of her anymore. He had never been afraid of her, of course, but now everyone else knew it too. "You told me this was your store, your rules, so let me remind you what the actual rules are. Rule 1, you treat every customer like they're the most important person in the world, because without them, this store doesn't exist. Rule 2, you treat every employee like they're your teammate, not your servant, because a team that hates each other makes terrible coffee. And Rule 3, you never, ever steal from the people who trust you." Keisha's lower lip trembled. For a moment, Marcus thought she might cry, but she didn't.
Instead, she did something worse. She pointed at Sage and said, "She knew about the tips. She helped me count the money every week." Sage's face went white. "That's not true. You made me count the tips so you could blame me if anyone found out. I never took a single dollar." "Prove it," Keisha said, her voice climbing into something desperate and sharp. Marcus looked at Sage. She was barely 20 years old, with pink hair and a nose ring and hands that were stained with coffee grounds. She looked terrified, but she also looked honest. "I believe you." And just like that, Keisha's last weapon shattered. The lawyer in the gray suit stepped forward and handed Keisha a single sheet of paper. It was her termination notice, effective immediately, along with a demand for repayment of the stolen tips within 14 days. If she didn't pay, the company would press charges. There was no negotiation. There was no appeal. There was just a blank line at the bottom where she was supposed to sign her name. Keisha snatched a pen from the counter and signed it without reading the fine print. Then she ripped off her name tag, threw it into the trash can where Marcus's resume still lay in pieces, and stormed toward the back door. She stopped at the threshold. She turned around one last time, looked at Marcus, and said, "You think you won. You'll be out of business in 2 years. This place is a sinking ship, and you're too busy playing dress-up to notice." Marcus didn't respond. He just watched her walk out the door, and when it swung shut behind her, he felt the entire room exhale.
Helena touched his elbow and murmured, "Should we call the police about the theft?" "Not yet," Marcus said. "Give her the 14 days. If she pays it back, we let her walk away with her record clean. If she doesn't, we let the lawyers handle it." "You're too kind," Helena said. "No," Marcus said. "I'm just tired of being angry. There's a difference." He turned to face the rest of the coffee shop. The customers were still staring. The employees were still frozen. Theo was gripping a milk pitcher so tightly that his knuckles had turned white, and Sage was crying silently, tears running down her cheeks and dripping onto the counter. Marcus walked over to her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're not in trouble," he said softly. "You did nothing wrong. In fact, you did everything right. You showed up on time, you did your job. You were kind to a stranger who walked in with a $5 bill and a torn hoodie. Do you know how rare that is?" Sage shook her head, still crying. "It's very rare," Marcus said, "and it's why I'm promoting you. Effective immediately, you're the new shift manager of this location. Same pay as Keisha, same authority, but with one difference. You're going to treat people the way you wanted to be treated. Deal?" Sage looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes and whispered, "Deal." Theo let out a cheer. The customers started clapping. Even the man in the business suit put his phone away and gave Marcus a slow nod of respect. For a brief moment, everything felt like the end of a movie. But Marcus knew better. The story wasn't over. Because Keisha Holloway had been right about one thing. The daily grind was struggling. Customer complaints were still up, profits were still down, and firing one bad manager wasn't going to fix a company that had lost its way. That was why Marcus had come here in the first place, not just to catch a thief, but to save his business. And he had a feeling that the most important lesson was still waiting for him somewhere in the chaos of the morning rush.
The rest of the day at the Wacker Drive location felt like a fever dream. Marcus shed his Eli Vance identity and became the owner again, but he didn't put on a suit or start barking orders. He pulled off his hoodie, borrowed an apron from the back, and got behind the counter. For the next 6 hours, he made lattes. He wiped down tables. He emptied trash cans. He learned the names of every employee and asked them what they would change about the store if they had the power to change anything. The answers broke his heart. Theo said the espresso machine hadn't been calibrated in 8 months. Sage said the schedule was posted so late every week that she couldn't plan her college classes. A quiet dishwasher named Malik said the back door lock was broken and anyone could walk in after dark. Marcus wrote every complaint down in a small notebook he kept in his back pocket. At 4 p.m., Helena returned with an update. Keisha had already transferred the stolen tip money back into the company account. She had also sent a long, rambling email to the regional office accusing Marcus of entrapment and psychological harassment. The lawyer said the email would make excellent evidence if Keisha ever tried to sue. "She's not going to sue," Marcus said. "She knows she's guilty. She's just embarrassed." "Good," Helena said. "Embarrassed people make bad decisions. Bad decisions make our job easier." Marcus smiled. Helena had worked for him for 7 years, and she had never once been wrong about human nature. She was the kind of manager who could look at a person for 30 seconds and tell you exactly what they would do in a crisis. He trusted her more than almost anyone in the world. That was why he asked her to do something unusual. "I want you to find out where Keisha goes next, not to harass her, just to watch. I want to know if she gets another management job somewhere else." Helena raised an eyebrow. "You want to warn her next employer?" "No," Marcus said. "I want to see if she learned anything. People like Keisha don't change overnight, but sometimes losing everything makes them stop and think. I'm not hoping for a redemption arc. I'm just curious." Helena nodded and made a note in her phone. Then she left to handle the paperwork, and Marcus went back to making coffee. 3 weeks later, Helena called him with an update. Keisha Holloway had applied for a shift manager position at a competing coffee chain called Grounds and Glory, 3 blocks away on Madison Street. The owner called the Daily Grind for a reference. Helena had told him the truth. Keisha was fired for stealing tips and falsifying timesheets. The owner withdrew the job offer within the hour. "That's it?" Marcus asked. "Not quite," Helena said. "She's now working as a cashier at a gas station on the South Side. Minimum wage, no benefits. She tried to apply at 6 other coffee shops, but the word travels fast in this industry. Nobody wants her." Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of him was satisfied. Keisha had hurt his employees, stolen from his customers, and treated his business like her personal kingdom. She deserved consequences. But another part of him felt sad. Not for Keisha, for the version of Keisha that could have existed if someone had stopped her 10 years ago. She was in her mid-40s, and she clearly had been bullying people for a long time. Had anyone ever told her to stop? Had anyone ever fired her before? Had anyone ever looked at her with genuine disappointment instead of just anger? "Don't feel sorry for her," Helena said, as if reading his mind. "She made her choices. You gave her a chance to pay back the money and walk away clean. She did that. Now she gets to live with the consequences." Marcus leaned back in his office chair and stared at the ceiling. His office was on the 10th floor of a building he owned on LaSalle Street, with the view of the Chicago River and the constant hum of traffic below.
It was a nice office, expensive, but right now he missed the sticky floors and warm smell of the coffee shop. "Helena," he said, "what happened to Theo?" "The teenage boy? He's still there. Sage promoted him to lead barista. He's getting paid $3 more per hour, and he's taking online classes in business management." "Good," Marcus said. "And Sage?" "She's doing a fantastic job. Customer complaints at the Wacker Drive location are down 60%. Employee satisfaction is up 80%. She even fixed the espresso machine herself after watching a tutorial on the internet." Marcus laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he had let out in weeks. "She fixed it herself?" "She said it was cheaper than waiting for you to approve a repair request." "I like her," Marcus said. "She's going to run this company someday." "She might," Helena said. "But first she wants to know if you're coming back to visit. The whole staff wants to thank you properly. Theo wants to make you a cappuccino, with proper foam this time." Marcus looked at his calendar. He had a board meeting in an hour, followed by a conference call with investors, followed by a dinner he didn't want to attend. His life had become a series of obligations stacked on top of each other like heavy boxes. "Tell them I'll be there next Tuesday, and tell Theo to have the milk pitcher ready." He hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long moment. The story of Keisha Holloway would become a legend at the Daily Grind. Employees would tell it to new hires as a warning and an inspiration. Customers who would witness the scene would post about it on social media. The man in the business suit had already uploaded his video, and it had gotten over 2 million views. But Marcus knew that the real story wasn't about the confrontation. It wasn't about the hidden identity or the public humiliation or the satisfying moment when Keisha signed her termination notice. The real story was about a quiet college kid with a torn hoodie and a $5 bill. A kid who didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't beg. He just sat there, drinking cold coffee, waiting for the truth to do its work. And in the end,
The truth always wins. 6 months passed. The daily grind didn't just survive, it thrived. Marcus implemented every suggestion his employees had given him during his undercover week. The espresso machines were calibrated monthly. The schedules were posted 2 weeks in advance. The backdoor lock was replaced with a key card system. And Sage, the pink-haired barista who had been kind to a stranger, became the youngest regional manager in company history at 21 years old. The Wacker Drive location became a destination. Customers came from across the city just to see the coffee shop where the owner went undercover. They took photos with the small table near the window where Marcus had sat. They ordered black coffee and left $5 bills as tips. They wrote reviews that said things like, "Best latte I've ever had," and the manager actually cares about her employees. One afternoon in November, Marcus decided to visit the location unannounced. No hoodie this time, no false identity. He just walked in wearing jeans and a sweater, ordered a black coffee, and sat at his usual table near the window.
The shop was busy, happy. Sage was behind the counter, laughing with Theo about something. The customers were smiling, the music was soft and warm. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he had gotten his company back. Then he saw her. Keisha Holloway was standing outside the window on the sidewalk, bundled in a cheap winter coat that was too thin for November in Chicago. Her face was older now, tired. The sharp acrylic nails were gone, replaced by bare, chapped fingers wrapped around a styrofoam cup from the gas station where she worked. She wasn't looking at Marcus. She was looking at the coffee shop, at the line of customers, at the laughter and warmth that she used to control. Her expression wasn't angry anymore. It wasn't bitter. It was something worse. It was longing. She stood there for almost 2 minutes, her breath fogging in the cold air. Then she turned and walked away, her shoulders hunched against the wind. She didn't try to come inside. She didn't try to cause a scene. She just disappeared into the crowd on the sidewalk, like a ghost that had overstayed its welcome. Marcus watched her go. He thought about inviting her in for a cup of coffee. He thought about offering her a second chance. But then he remembered the way she had torn his resume in half, the way she had made Theo remake that cappuccino 4 times, the way she had told the nurse that her taste buds were broken. Some people don't change. They just learn to hide their cruelty better. Sage came over to his table with a fresh cup of coffee. She set it down gently and looked at the window where Keisha had been standing. "You saw her?" "I saw her," Sage said. "She comes by once a month, stands there for a few minutes, then leaves. She never comes inside." "Does she ever try to talk to you?" "No," Sage said. "She just watches. I think she's trying to remember what it felt like to be in charge of something." Marcus took a sip of his coffee. It was perfect. Hot, smooth, with just the right amount of bitterness. Theo had made it, and he had finally learned how to calibrate the machine. "She's not in charge of anything anymore," Marcus said quietly. "She's just a person standing in the cold, watching other people live the life she threw away." Sage nodded. She didn't look happy about it. She didn't look sad either. She just looked like someone who had learned an important lesson about power and humility and the way small cruelties add up to a ruined life. "Mr. DeLuca, can I ask you something? Call me Marcus, and yes, why didn't you just fire her on the spot? Why did you sit there and let her humiliate you first?" Marcus set down his coffee cup and looked out the window at the gray November sky. He thought about the answer for a long time before he spoke. "Because if I had revealed myself right away, she would have just thought she was unlucky. She would have blamed me for tricking her. She would have told herself that she was a good manager who got ambushed by a rich guy playing games. But by letting her show her true self first, in front of customers, in front of her employees, in front of everyone, I made sure she couldn't hide from the truth. She didn't lose her job because of me."
She lost her job because of who she was. Sage was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "That's the wisest thing anyone has ever said to me." "It's not wisdom," Marcus said. "It's just experience. I've been doing this long enough to know that you can't change a bully by fighting them. You can only change them by exposing them. And then you step back and let the world do the rest." He finished his coffee, left a $20 bill on the table, and walked out of the shop. The cold air hit his face, sharp and clean. He looked down the sidewalk, but Keisha was already gone. Somewhere in this city, she was working a minimum-wage job, living in a small apartment, and wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. She would never be a manager again. She would never hold power over anyone again. She would spend the rest of her career being told what to do by people half her age, and every single day she would remember the moment she threw a resume in the trash and thought she had won. That was the karma. Not revenge, not punishment, just the quiet, inevitable consequence of treating people like they didn't matter. Marcus DeLuca got into his car and drove back to his office. He had a company to run, a reputation to rebuild, and 1,000 little decisions to make every day about the kind of leader he wanted to be. He thought about the one perfect line he had said to Keisha in the coffee shop, the line that had made the whole room go silent, the line that had been quoted in articles and shared on social media and printed on a plaque that now hung in the break room of every Daily Grind location. "I'm not the one who decides your fate. She is." And he had pointed to the door, to the truth, to the consequences that were already walking through it. If this story reminded you that kindness costs nothing and cruelty costs everything, then hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment with the word coffee if you believe that how you treat the person with the least power says everything about who you really are.